Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your off-season edition of the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion for January 29th, 2019. Happy Tuesday to you. Hopefully you're staying warm, especially if you're in the upper Midwest where temperatures are brutally cold. Haven't seen that much cold since apparently the 90s. So the 1990s making a comeback this week weather-wise. And don't worry, though, it's going to change. We'll talk about that towards the end of today's discussion under the lower 48 part. First, though, let's start off with a look at the Southern Oscillation Index, the SOI dashboard here from the Bureau of Meteorology in Australia. The one thing that I really want to point out, even though the 30-day has clearly had a pretty, not a steep dip, but a steady dip, this 90-day average right here that I'm drawing over in blue, that's been less of a dip. It's more a just gradual fall. And if we go back up here and look at the chart that they have, again, really not that negative overall. And none of the daily contributor today is +3, and that 90-day, that's what I really like to look at there. That's positive. So until that is significantly negative, there are no signs of an El Nino coming on with it being like that. Not a significant El Nino. Is the Pacific, the tropical Pacific, a little warmer than average? Absolutely, and we can see that right here. And it's great to have these charts updating regularly and dependably now that the government shutdown has been temporarily, hopefully permanently, halted, and some of these products from the National Weather Service, etc., are back in action. So you see here along the equatorial Pacific here, at least in the eastern side of it overall, this sort of western hemisphere shot, nothing stands out as being really abnormally over-the-top warm, and there's even a few cold patches showing up over here. A lot of the warmth is in the eastern Pacific, and it's just not screaming, significant El Nino, not at all. And then looking up here in the areas north of the equator, a lot of that is below average and just a few speckles of above. Quite a contrast to last year when it looked like it was setting up for quite a significant El Nino to develop. And, of course, that didn't happen. And I don't think it's going to happen again this year. Doesn't mean I'm going to be right, but I don't see it in the cards. The atmosphere and the ocean are not lining up properly to create a substantial El Nino. In the meanwhile, look at what's happening in the tropical Atlantic out here. That is significant. Even though it's only late January, we're going to really keep an eye on this. And if it persists through the spring, as long as we don't get a massive flip to where we have strong high pressure anchored up here or over Africa or whatever, a very, very strong Azores high that just blasts the trade winds out here, a very, very positive, strong NAO is another way to look at it. This is probably going to continue to warm, but we'll see. That too can change very quickly. But as of now, that main development region that a lot of us watch, it's not the only thing, right? I mean, Michael had nothing to do with the MDR when it came up through here. Florence did, though, as it got its genesis, but then it made landfall up here in the subtropics. And so a lot of weight gets put on it, rightfully so, because a lot of the worst hurricanes in history have come through here. Certainly, 2017, right? But, it's not everything. And it's just interesting, though, that it's staying warm and we're marching through the winter. Again, one of the things that we can look at on a regular basis, this particular graphic updates a couple of times per week. This is what it looked like going back to the first few days of January, just to compare, and you can see how in the eastern Atlantic there especially, it's definitely filled in. If we just look at this box right through here and we compare, that was at the beginning of the month, and here we are 26 days later, and really no significant changes out here in the eastern and equatorial Pacific. We'll kind of box that off as well. At the beginning of the month, I guess you could argue that it was a little bit more robust with warmth, and now it's been eroded away just a little bit. But no major changes, nothing significant or earth-shattering, no news headlines coming out of it, none of that nonsense. It's just kind of steadily waning away. And I can show you that by the animation here. I really like this. This is the subsurface animation of the anomalies. And as you can see, lots and lots of warmth in the upper part of the equatorial Pacific at the beginning of the year, late last year and at the beginning of the year. But look how that, too, erodes away. See, look at that. It's literally eroding away like frost on a windshield when you put the defroster on the inside of the car or truck or SUV, and it erodes that frost away. That's what this reminds me of, except this is warmth and not frost, but that's my analogy. I'm sticking to it. And if we look at the upper 75 meters of the ocean, just look at how that evolves. My eyes don't deceive me, and neither do yours. There it is. And so the question will be, and is, does this represent another one of these in the making, where it congeals over here and then gradually spreads eastward as I draw and mess everything up? In other words, do we get another development of a deep, warm pool that reinvigorates the warm ENSO event that's trying to develop? Well, I would argue not with a positive SOI, even though that's not the main driver. That's a big clue to me. And then you see, too, these are interesting. Way down in the subsurface in the western Pacific, it's just not much there to reinvigorate, as I said, the overall warmth. So maybe warm neutral to just neutral, but no significant El Nino for 2019, in Mark's opinion. And I think most people would agree. We'll see. The one good thing is we'll know for sure in a few months. All right, remember I made a lot about how warm it was in the Gulf of Mexico. That 26 Celsius isotherm is still there, despite the cold air that came down. Lows or highs yesterday in the 50s and 60s in southeast Florida, and yet it just goes to show you how deep this warm water probably is. It's not just a shallow, it's not shelf water. Look up here off the coast of Louisiana, where the water is quite shallow. That'll warm into the low 90s Fahrenheit during the summer, but it's easy for it to cool off during the winter because it's shallow and easily mixed. And, obviously this is farther north in latitude, so it's more prone to cold air intrusions. But it is remarkable. And, I just don't remember seeing, it's not a giant area of the Gulf, but that's pretty substantial that the loop current is trying to nose its way in. And now the days are getting longer, so the incoming solar radiation is gradually becoming more. And overall temperatures in the Gulf, cold air intrusions notwithstanding, but we're running out of time. February's just around the corner, and then you get into March and the sun angle will really get strong, and boom, everything starts to warm up climatologically anyway. So probably doesn't mean much because the Gulf is always warm enough for hurricanes and intense hurricanes. It's just an interesting anomaly to point out. Along the eastern seaboard here, where we have a complete zero, for the most part, I guess, of any substantial nor'easters, no big blockbuster nor'easters this year, not yet. Water temperatures cold against the shelf areas, of course, against the land masses, and then fairly warm out in the Gulf Stream. A lot more cold air is drained off of this part of the country than down in the Gulf and towards the Yucatan Channel, obviously. And so this has cooled off, as you'd expect, temps in the low 50s off of Charleston, 50s and 40s, and even colder than that the more northward you progress. So stay out of the water unless you're a great white shark. Just seen a lot of people talking about great whites that they tag and watch, and I guess they don't mind the cold water. I don't know. Hey, look, I want to show you something that I found troubling and interesting at the same time. A good friend of mine, Kathleen Koch, who used to work with CNN, and now she has a nonprofit that she has that deals a lot with disaster resilience and preparedness, etc. She pointed this out and shared it on her Facebook. This is from Beverly Lewis. I don't know her. And it talks about this creek down in Florida, okay? And I don't know how you pronounce it exactly, but It's either Ecofina or Ecofina, I presume, one of those two. And this is really kind of troubling. This is a picture in the good days, right? And you see the field and everything. And this is what it looks like recently. Apparently, the debris that has clogged this creek has, from Michael, and we're talking just unfathomable amounts of tree damage. You know, rivaling Hugo, probably exceeding Hugo. I know some people got upset about that when I tweeted it. Not legitimately upset, but, oh no, Hugo was the most ever. I think Michael's got Hugo beat. I really do. And this is evidence of it. Some of this timber that's rotting and decaying now and will for generations, literally, ask people who survived or dealt with Hugo. It's clogging up the watersheds. And so remember also that I said we need to have rain in this area so that the forest down here that has been leveled, you know, all throughout this area doesn't just dry out and become this massive tinderbox. Well, the downside to constant rain, these aquifers and these watersheds all through here are filling up. So this Ecofina Creek area has filled and is creating this flooding issue. And I'm just wondering if anybody else is dealing with this. You know, this Beverly Lewis posted it on her Facebook. She had 200 and something comments right there, a lot of shares, etc., people praying for it to recede, etc., some people hoping there's action that can be taken. But as a scientist, I'm very curious about this as a negative impact of the aftermath that could linger, especially if we get, excuse me, it's the dry air, an early season tropical cyclone in late May like we had with Alberto last year, or June, or whatever, and then we keep on with this rainy pattern. This is something to keep an eye on, okay? So anybody with any further information, please feel free to comment about it in the YouTube comments or elsewhere on social media. But this is the area that we're talking about, all through here in this watershed coming out of southern Washington County into Bay County, northern Bay County. And I find that to be very interesting. Not in a good way, but it piqued my interest, okay? So any further information that you folks that are living with this down there can provide, please hit me up. I'd like to learn more about it. Thank you very much. And just to show you, I mean, look, it's still in almost flood stage down here, all right? And this is the Ecofina. I'll just call it Echo. We'll hope for the best. 50-50 shot, I guess, at State Road 20, Ecofina Creek there, you know, running above where it should be, put it that way. I mean, normally it's got to be down here, I would guess, and even lower. And there you go. It's in the action to minor flooding, and then you're seeing these other problems. So whatever you can share with me and how you're dealing with it and other pictures, etc., links you can point me to, I would appreciate it. All right, real quick on lower 48 weather. You've already seen it. I'm not going to beat this dead horse, frozen dead horse. Oh, that's terrible, but I bet there are, unfortunately. I don't know how anything survives in this kind of cold, you know, minus 60 wind chills. No bueno. I wouldn't like that. That's the extreme weather that I'm not going to be a part of. Sorry. Not going to be going after cold weather. You get me a blizzard and 25 degrees up here, or something off of New Jersey or eastern Long Island, yes, that's more appealing, I guess, than minus 60. But this is dangerous stuff. It really is. And that's what all this is about, these colors in here. You don't see these very often, but there they are. Some winter storm action up here in New England. But it's still bizarre that we're not seeing any of these major winter storms cutting across the normal areas. No coastal storms, etc. And if we run through the GFS here, you know, the operational over the next 2 weeks, I'm just going to go out 2 weeks. You know, cold comes and goes. It looks like it's going to warm up next week, by the way. All these heights start to rise down here. You get this blue low height, 540 thickness, starts to lift north. That's just a meteorological way to show me, oh yeah, the warm air is coming, thank goodness. a February thaw. We missed it in January, I guess. But look, there it is, another low pressure scooting on by well to the north and west. Oh, man, I drew the storm track almost perfect. That's because it's predictable. There's another one. It tries to get off the coast here, south of Long Island, in about 9 days or so, but that'll probably change, and it'll be up in Ontario. But you see, as we go through the next 2 weeks, everything is stretched out, wet down here in the south, of course, because no major Arctic invasions for a while. That will be confined to the northern tier, which I guess it can just stay there. But again, February into March is typically the prime nor'easter season, so don't count it out just yet in terms of those of you that are excited about such things. Some people hate it. I understand that. They are disruptive. They can be deadly, so remember, you got to be respectful about these things. Even this very cold, unfortunately, it's going to kill people. Very, very cold weather will attack folks that are susceptible to such things, that aren't prepared for it. And so as we sort of cheer on and root for winter storms and so forth, I know I'm going to go back to this real quick. There was a big expectation of some wintry weather through here today that really didn't pan out. Temperatures were slightly warmer, and it was a big wah-wah. But even that, you get some. You remember Atlanta a few years ago, 1-2 inches of snow at best, and it was a nightmare. Raleigh-Durham in 2014, also an inch or two of snow right at rush hour. The cold air came in. Anyway, I'm just rambling on and on and on, just trying to balance out the excitement for interesting and extreme weather for the fact that, yes, it can overwhelm us and cause problems. As long as we keep that into perspective, it's okay to be excited about it. There's just that balance there. All right, well, that is it from me for today. Interesting things just to keep an eye on out in the tropics that over the next few weeks, we're almost done with January. And then February, that's a shorter month. Is it a shorter month this year? I hadn't even looked. It'll go by. Sometimes it's longer, right, in a leap year. I have no clue. Or maybe it's not even a leap year. I don't know. That's why I have Google Calendar. It is usually a shorter month, and then boom, it's March. And once it's March, you only got 90 days, and then the hurricane season is back. And you know what that means, all right? And we'll deal with that when it comes. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks, as always, for being a part of these discussions by watching from your side of the screen. Remember, I am funded, especially in the off-season, through my Patreon supporters. So if you would like to become a patron, it doesn't matter what level, $1 or $1,000. It all adds up. And I got a great group of people. They've been very loyal and very helpful, and I appreciate that. And if you want to join that, it's easy. Patreon.com. You see the link there, /HurricaneTrack. Again, have a great rest of your week. It's going to warm up after this big cold spell, so look forward to that. I'll discuss that Monday or Tuesday of next week. I usually try to get these done the first couple of days of the week. It just depends on how crazy my life is. But we will be talking warmth next week. Yippee. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. We'll talk again next week.